So one of the most surprising facts about needle felting is that you can start with something like this, just a pull of wool, and turn it into something like this. It's always amazing to me, the transformation that can take place with just a simple needle and a piece of wool. So today I'm going to show you all of my most favorite tools for an absolute beginner, what I cannot live without on a day-to-day basis. I'm also going to show you some of my favorite wool and where I buy it from. And then I'm going to give you an idea how I make certain little things like this. We'll start with something small. And I'm just going to show you, give you an idea of how I do that. So one of the challenges for most beginners is that there's so many tools out there, so many choices, that it's super, super overwhelming. And when I first started needle felting, I was, watching lots of tutorials. I was buying a lot of books. So a lot of sources gave me a lot of ideas of things to buy. After using all of these things that I purchased for a few years, I really have figured out that pretty much everything that you see here is what I cannot live without. So I'm going to go over everything step by step for you, what I use, what I love, what's worked for me, and hopefully it'll give you a little bit of insight and help you get started without spending a fortune. So first of all, let's just talk about mats. So these mats right here are both Wool Buddy mats. This was my original mat from the very, very beginning, my first Wool Buddy mat. I actually started with a burlap mat that was filled with rice. I could not stand it. The rice got everywhere. It leaked through the mat like little granules, and I couldn't stand it. So I ended up moving. I tried some foam mats. I didn't like that because they pulled apart. And then I came to the Wool Buddy mats. Now this one is beat up. You can tell she is loved. And this is one of my newer ones. And still very loved, but not as beat up. So what I do to keep the surface, you can still felt on this, but sometimes the colors will, be picked up in your felts. So what I do is I just get a piece of felt. It doesn't have to be 100% wool. And I get a piece of felt and I'll cover my pad when I'm on a project. So if I'm working on maybe something white, like this little chicken, I might cover this with white, but it's not even necessary because most of the time you're not stabbing into your mat. It looks like you are, but this is all from doing flat things like clothing, the wings, feet, that kind of thing, any ears, anything that you need to do flat, you do stab directly into the mat. But most of the time you're not stabbing into the mat. You're stabbing into your project. So these Wool Buddy mats, they are about 2 inches thick. And this is a 6x6 and this is a 9x9. If you only can get one, the 6x6 is perfectly fine. It will work for you. I take this with me in my little travel bag everywhere. If I go upstairs to watch TV, I'll take it upstairs with me. And this one is just good for when you're working on a little bit of a larger project and you need some more space. The 9x9 is great. So whichever one that you want, Wool Buddy mats, I think are the way to go. I have tried other mats and I keep coming back to these. In addition to these two that you see, I actually have like 3 or 4 more other ones. And eventually down the road, if you just keep watching the videos, you're going to see I have one that it's even worse off than this. And I'm going to resurface it. So if you're interested in knowing how to resurface a Wool Buddy mat, subscribe and you'll be notified when that video comes out. So that is what I recommend first and foremost, is the wool buddy mats. As far as needles go, I have kind of tried several different companies' needles, and the needles that I like the most are Desert Breeze, which are these three right here, and Living Felt's needles. The Desert Breeze needles, you can buy them on Amazon. They're made in Germany. And you can even buy a little starter pack like this. It actually has 2 of each of these needles. So it goes from the most coarse down to a fine needle. So this is a 36, this is a 38, and this is a 40. So the way that it works with needle felting is with the higher number gauge is the finer the needle. So you can kind of see just the thickness of those. So this one on the far left, the 36, is much thicker than the 40. So when you're working on a project, you'll start with your more coarse needles just to build up the wool and to really start to get your shape. You use your medium coarse needles, like the 38, to form your shape. And then your finer needles are for fine details. So these are, again, the Desert Breeze. I love how they feel in my hand. I love how they feel in the wool. And I will continue going back to these. They're very sturdy as well. I've not had any issues, except for once when my husband came over and just went like that and broke one in half. But, you know, he didn't mean it. He didn't know what was going to happen. So the next type of needle that I love are these. It's called Clover, Clover. That's the name of the company. And this is just a Clover pen tool. You'll see lots and lots of people using these Clover pen tools. I actually have 2 of them that I own. I broke a needle yesterday. You can see, look at that. Broken and bent. But anyway, in this one, I have my coarse needles for really, really hard work. Something that I need to bind and start to form a shape. And then in this one, I have my fine needles. So I mark it with floral tape. So I always know that my floral tape one is my fine needles. I use this on almost every single project. What I have in this one is 3 42 triangles, and these are all by Living Felt. That is the other company that I absolutely love their needles. I haven't had any problems with their needles. I especially love the 42 gauge. They're my favorite. So these, the 42, are even finer than this one. So this is a 40, this is a 42. The higher the number, the finer the needles. When you put 2 or more needles together in one of these multi-tools, they're like a powerhouse. They work harder together and you can get your job done faster. So that's pretty much, you know, the gist of it. So that's why you'll see people using multi-tools. I also have this multi-tool that just came in one of my beginner kits. I think it holds 8 needles. I have 5 in there right now. And these are a medium fine needle. So these are like a 38 or a 36 needle. And again, this is if I'm working on a really large project and I just need to get it condensed down and get the air out of the project, which I'll explain a little bit more about in a little bit. But so these are the different types of needles, you know, that I use on a daily basis that I literally cannot live without. The last one here is also by Clover. They're a great source for needles. And this is a punch tool. So it's locked. Let me unlock it. Okay, so if you look at this, it holds 6 needles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, actually 5. I always thought it was 6. It holds 5 needles, and they are all fine. And this is really, really good for doing like ears or flat surfaces, if you're doing a 2D painting with wool, or if you're doing If you're making any kind of like a little wing or a flap or something that you need to flatten out, a little dress or clothing, anything like that. You can even use it to flatten out your, like I cleaned this mat, and I can even just use it to flatten out my mat and get my mat back into shape like I want. So anything that you need to flatten, this is your tool. Along with the needles, another amazing tool is this Clover seam ripper. Literally cannot live without my seam ripper because if you watch my videos, you will know that one of my favorite things to say is that everything is fixable with felting. Well, this is one of the ways that it's so fixable because this is pretty sharp, and it's it allows you it allows you to stick your tip into something. I'm just going to show you right here. So let's just say I made a mistake on this little guy. I could literally just put it in and rip that out. That is how simple it is. I know that probably hurt somebody. I'm like, oh no, you ripped off your wing. But it's just as easy to put it right back on. So if you made a mistake and you need to remove that mistake, a seam ripper is your best friend, literally. So you really want to invest in one of these. It does not have to be a Clover seam ripper, but I have never had an issue with this. It's really, really good. So that is a wonderful, wonderful tool. And moving on away from needles, let's talk about your awl. In your beginner kits that you normally will purchase, especially from Amazon, most of them come with a little awl like this. I did use this for a while, but this awl was a hand-me-down from my dad. I love it. I use it all the time. This is great for if you need to run wire through the middle of an animal, or if you are poking holes for eyes, if you're trying to string, like let's say you do a teddy bear and you want to string an arm to a body. If you're putting whiskers through, you can use this for anything really. So I like the thickness of this awl because a lot of times I will use this 14 gauge wire, and you can see this is going to go like, it's going to go right through that hole. It's going to make it a smooth transition for me if I'm sticking wire, through a piece. So this is a really good tool to invest in. Get a good one. Let's see. So next would be scissors. You need to have a really good sharp pair of scissors. And I do suggest a small pair, and then also a large pair. I have a large pair of the Fiskars scissors, but I don't have them with me in my room right now. I do use them both all the time. The small one is good, especially for, little tiny things. Like, so we already beat up on this poor little guy. So, if you need anything cut, it's just super, super easy. And you can get into, do little fine details, and make little cuts that you need. They're very, very handy. So I could not live without this. Wire is something you always want to have on hand. I have all different gauges. I have, and you just start saving up. And if you can only start with one, I would start with an aluminum 14 gauge wire. If you can only start with one. But a good thing to do is when you see like a jewelry wire on sale, whether it be like a 20 or 22 gauge or 26 gauge, just grab a small little spindle of that wire, and then eventually you're going to need it for something, and just start, stocking up on wire. But wire is really good for armatures, and also if you're only, if you're kind of afraid of an armature right now, and you just want to do like arms and legs, you can very easily take a small piece of wire like this, run it through a body, and make arms and legs, and just wrap those. If you watch future videos, I am going to teach how to wrap. And I also do have how to wrap wire armature video right now, like to do an entire person. But I'm also going to do some drills, some speed drills on wrapping wire armature. And so if you are interested in that, just keep an eye out because that's coming soon. One of the other things that I cannot live without is my ruler. I like a big 18-inch ruler. I like to just really be able to see without a doubt what I'm measuring, and I measure pulls of wool all the time. So if I pull it, I like to know, how thick it is, and I like to know how long it is. That way, if I make a piece again, like let's say I want to sell something at a trade show, I make a little note. So that was 8 inches by 2 inches. So I know that if I'm going to do this again, I need at least 8 inches by 2 inches to get the same results. So I'm always measuring. So that's just a good little thing to have on hand. This is not necessary, but one of my most favorite things. This is the Zuli Tool by Serafina Fiber Art. I've kind of nicked mine up because I've used it a lot, but basically what this is it allows you to wrap your wool, and it has that, or even just like a little leg or a thigh, body, whatever you're making. It allows you to wrap your wool, and then when you pull it off, it's already in that shape, and then you just firm that shape up. But this gets the air out of the wool, which condenses it for you, and just gives you a really good like starting base to any project that you make. It also has this little end here. So what you would do with that is that, like, let's just say you're making a mouse and his head is so thick and you want the nose to taper down. Well, that's going to do an automatic taper for you. It's amazing. This side is for if you wanted to do like a rectangle, like say you need like a little flat pillow, you could just easily do a rectangle instead of a round. And when you take that off, it's in a square or a rectangle shape. The end is really great for ears. So if you can just imagine like a bunny ear with the shape, if you put it down, you take your needle and trace around it, and you have the tip of a bunny ear. So this is a really good tool. It's called the Zuli Tool. I'll leave a link to this on her website. I don't get any, I don't get anything to promote this, but I love it, and I would never not have it in my stash. Another thing that you can do if you don't have a Zuli tool is you can just get any kind of a stick or a spoon or a spindle, or this is just like a little, I think this is to roast marshmallows, a skewer. It's got the taper on the end as well, and you can wrap right up this as well and start building up on that. So you can get a thicker spoon if you need it to be thicker. There's a lot of things that you can do with this. And it is a good tool to have on hand. For the wire, I suggest that I always have one of these little clippers. This is just my favorite little tool that I go to. And then if I need to bend my wire, depending on, the size of the project, a little needle nose or a larger needle nose will work. And you only need one. So if you can't afford all three, I would just go ahead and get like maybe the medium-sized needle nose, because it also has a wire cutter inside of it. So that's a pretty good little tip there. Elmer's glue is something that I use probably every project. Maybe not daily, but every project somewhere. I use this for eyes. I use this sometimes to make my wire tacky, to wrap, little things like that. And it just comes in very, very handy. And then one of my most favorite tools of all is Power Wax. This is a water-based cold wax. and it is by the company Power Tex. Let me see. I'm going to try to hold it there and see if it can focus for you. This is the coolest stuff in the world. So basically what this is it's a little cold wax. You rub it on in this form. It's you know, moist like a cream. You rub it on in this form and then it hardens. So here is a beak that I did yesterday, and I don't know if you can see, that's like super hard. You can't, you know, you can't really bend it or anything like that. Sometimes they're a little bit more pliable. If it's on a bendable like wire, it'll bend for you. But basically all you do is you just take this, you rub it onto what you want to be hard. It will stiffen up for you, and then you can mold it and shape it. If you watch my Chip the Christmas Mouse, I use this on all of his tiny hands and feet. I wrap the wire with the wool, and then I come back and I use a tool like this with a silicone end, and I shape the hands and I shape the feet. And this little end as well, this is a clay tool. This little end as well goes in between the fingers on the little tiny hands and sort of gets down there, and you can shape and mold it. So I cannot live without this. I will never be without a cold wax. I love it. If you're finding that something's just too fuzzy, you can also just put it on there. See how it smoothed that out? So if I am just having a lot of fuzz and I'm not happy with it, you know, and it's an important project, you can put a little bit on there and it'll just smooth it right out. And then when it dries, it's going to look like this. Like right now, this is wet, but when it dries, see how you can't even tell that there's wax on this. So it's a very powerful tool. I absolutely love it. Okay. Let me move all these away. And the next thing that I want to talk about is wool. So there's a lot of different types of wool that you can purchase, and it gets really, really confusing. So the first thing that I want to tell you about is core wool. Here is a bag of core wool. This one is a roving, which basically just means that it comes like this. This is a roving. Sometimes people will call them slivers, something like that. But it's a roving, and it just means that you can pull it. It's going to be anywhere from 2 to 4 inches thick. And you pull it whatever length you want for your need, and you start working with it. The core wool, that is, if you see like a carded or a bat, it's called a bat. It just basically means, this is not core wool, but I'm going to show you what a bat is. So a bat comes like this, and it's not in that roving form. You got to kind of find the end. Sometimes it's hard to find it. Okay, so it comes like this. They use a big machine to card the wool, and it comes off in layers like this. So this is batting. There's no right or wrong. You're going to find out what you like. You might like the batting, you might like the roving. Try both. You know, the first time that you need core wool, try the roving. The second time you need core wool, try the batting. Just see what you like, what works best for you. There's no right or wrong. It's just really personal preference. So, but the reason for core wool, there's a few reasons to have this. So the main reason is that it's cheaper, it's less expensive than your colored wools. It gets really, really thick. It's a very coarse wool, so it gets really, really thick pretty quickly, and you can make a very dense inside of a felted project with core wool. Once you get your wool really, really dense, then you can come with a color and you can cover that up. So that's one of the main reasons that everybody always says use core wool first. There are some, tricks that you can use with core wool. Like for instance, you can buy pre-made wool balls if you have trouble, making a circle, making a ball. You can do that. But otherwise it's pretty simple to use. The biggest trick with core wool, the biggest thing that will help you, I think, is the tighter that you wrap it. I'm going to show you an example right here. So this was not wrapped very tight at all. Now let's just come through the center here, and I'm going to pull really hard, and I'm going to wrap really hard right here. So the tighter that you wrap it, the more condensed it is. And I'm pulling, like you can see my finger turning red right there. Don't hurt yourself or anything, but just, I'm trying to compact this so that I can get the air out of it and make it much more dense. So you can see, like if I'm trying right here to squeeze here, I can barely even squeeze that, and I haven't even felted it. And over here, I can squeeze it all the way down. So this is compact. There's hardly any air in there, and it's going to felt for me much faster and a much harder felt. So I'll have a really good base like for my project. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you. I'm going to put this down. In this instance or example, I'm going to take my hardest needle that I have here, and I'm just going to go ahead and start. You can see it's really hard to get through because I've already done it so tight. But I'm just going to start with my needle, and I'm going to poke in and pull out. If you've never needle felted before, a very important tip is never poke in and twist. You always want to go in and then out the same direction. This will keep your needle from breaking. So you always want to go in and out, same direction. Okay, so I have felted right there. This part is not coming apart. And then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to do the center section here. And you can see how it took down that fuzz that was there. So this is really like how you would start off a project. Most people will start with whatever shape that they're wanting. They'll wind it up, whether it's on the skewer or it's just on your mat. They'll wind it up, try to get as much air out of it as possible, and then start sculpting with your needles. You're sculpting a shape. Whatever direction you point your needle is the direction that the wool is going to go. So if I want a real good example of that, let me turn it this way so I don't hit my needles. But if I want this wool to move this direction towards this hard area, if I start sculpting it that direction, look where it's going. See how it's moving inward to the center. Now, if I wanted it to go another way, I could push my needle this way and look where it's going. So whichever direction you're pointing your needle, that is the direction that your wool is going to go. That's just a really good beginner tip. Okay. If I wanted this to be like, let's just say a little cylinder, I'm just going to keep using the same needle, pushing the wool towards the center of the cylinder. never twisting when I'm in. And you also don't want to go all the way through. So like I was telling you with the mat earlier, you're not going to typically be felting into your mat unless you're doing a flat piece. If you're doing like ears or wings or you know, a tail, something like that, or even a dress or clothing, something like that, then you'll be felting into your mat. I'll give you an example of that. But like right now, since I have this piece and I'm really working on the piece, I don't need to go into my mat. So you just go into the center of your piece and you stop. So the actual barbs on the needles, the way that they work is they have barbs here, and then the fibers have their own natural barbs. So as you're pushing these barbs against these barbs, they're combining like this, and they're felting together. That's the magic. That's how it works. So you don't need to push your needle any more past where those barbs go. So I don't have to push it all the way up here and go through my entire piece. Okay, so this is really loose. So what I would do generally is I'm going to fold that over, get some of that air out, and I'm just going to keep felting it in the direction that I want the wool to go. Making sure that I'm not twisting the needle when I pull it out. So in, out, in, out. That's the motion that you need. It's okay to turn your hand before you stick the needle in. Just don't turn your hand while the needle's in. So if I need it to go a different direction, I'm going to turn my hand before I poke. You can turn your piece. And if you keep working on it, you're going to get, you know, a perfect little cylinder. So at this point, I do have a really good, you know, beginner shape here. So you could move to your next gauge needle. So this is the 38. And you can continue shaping with the 38. It's a little bit easier to get this one in because this is very coarse. This is medium fine. So you start working with your 38 and go around your entire piece. You can see this core wool is really stiffening up. So let's just make a little monster. You might as well make something really cool while you're watching. So as I turn and I just keep felting, this is continuing to sculpt. You're sculpting the wool with your needles. So now he's really cute. And then let's move on to a different type of wool. So this is, we're moving away from core, and I'm going to show you, this is a carded wool. All carded wool means, and you can again get this in roving or bats, but all it means is that it used to be a really fine wool, something like this, something very, very fine. This is not carded. This is just a really nice blend of long fiber wools, and these fibers are long. So if I were to pull a fiber out, you can see how long this is. That's considered a staple length. When you see a pull like that, that's a staple length. So those are just, you know, some terms that people will use. That's considered a staple length. This is a very fine wool, and it is not carded. It's still feltable. It's just a finer wool that you might use for something like maybe somebody's hair, or a decoration on the outside, or a landscape. This is from Serafina Fiber Arts. If you think it's just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, which it is, it's beautiful. But this is their I think it's called Timberwood landscape batting, and or roving. And they've taken a blend of all these beautiful, like, Coriadel merino wools. They're long staple lengths, and it's just gorgeous. I actually keep this one wrapped up because I love it so much. I don't want it to get any other colors mixed in with it. But what happens with carded is you take, in order to make it needle felt better, because the longer staple lengths don't needle felt that well, and it takes a lot longer and it has a different look. So if you want it to needle felt really well, you just basically take, I'll show you, these are carders right here. So you literally would just take those other fibers, you would put it on your carder, and you transfer it from one to another, and you blend. That's called carding. This is what carding is. So anytime you see a carded wool, this is what's happened to it. Whether it be on a hand carding, tool like this, or on a big drum carder. It doesn't matter, it's still carded. So that's what that is. The more that wool is carded, the easier it's going to be to felt, because what happens is your staple length, see how that one was really long, like almost 6 inches. Look at this staple length. It's like nothing. So the more that it's carded, the staple length is super short, and all that means is that it's going to felt really, really easy. So let me show you. We'll make our little monster orange, since that's what I have out. I'm going to wrap this around him. And I'm just going to go ahead and take my 38. We'll get one coat on him. And because this carded wool has that short little staple length, it's going to felt in super well and super fast for me. I don't have to go in very deep. Just the tip of my needle really is all that matters. So I went all the way around, and you can see, because I used a medium needle, you can actually see my needle, my pokes. You can see where I poked it. So a couple of ways to get rid of this is, one, you can use your fingers. You have oil on your fingers, and the friction when you rub can help work those out. So see how it sort of took those away? So you can do that. Another thing that you can do is you can get a finer needle. So this is a 40. And then you can start going over those pokes with this finer needle, and it's going to sort of start smoothing your piece out. So one of the questions that I'm asked the most is, how do you get really smooth pieces? So basically, it's exactly what I'm showing you here. You start with a very coarse needle, you get a really hard core, move down to your medium needle, and then move down to your finer needles. And if you felt close, like all of my pokes are close to each other. So if I felt close and I stay, very consistent in my depth and that kind of thing, like how deep I'm poking, it's gonna have a really fine, it's gonna have a really smooth texture at the end. So that was just a little bit you can see, you know, kind of how it covered. Let's get him really covered up. So a lot of things you can do a lot of things here. So you could figure out if you wanted to make your monster like with this kind of long over him with a little, you know, almost like a ghost, or I could just keep wrapping. I think I'm going to keep wrapping because he's just a fun little guy. I can already kind of see the monster coming together here. And if you want your job to go a little faster, go to a multi-tool. So this is my fine 42s. Watch your fingers. Now you can see here how this little area is already compressed down just from those little stabs. So I'm just going to go ahead and hold this down on the end so I get my fingers out of the way. Turn it. Turn it. Just keep turning and felting. I'm going to pull my ends off. And I kind of like this right here, so I think I'm going to let that be his hair. And then I'm going to felt this end down. So whichever way I want the wool to go, that's the way I'm going to push my needle. I'm dragging it very gently. I'm not pushing it. I'm just dragging my needle over, getting the wool where I want it, and then felting. If you end up following along and you make a little monster, I totally want to see your monster. Please show me your monster. I'm going to grab another color. So let's give him a little bit of fire hair. So I'm just gonna this is just another carded wool, different company, but another carded wool. I'm just gonna very barely put it over, wrap it around. Now this part, I like the fringe, so I'm not really gonna felt that too much. Just turn that over. That's super cool. Anything that wants to naturally fall off, just let it. Oh, and let me show you how the power wax works. So let's say we want this to look like fire, which we do. You can just put it right on this end. This is the coolest stuff, you guys. So look at that. You generally will have a paper towel, but I don't. I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to let this dry, and I will be right back. Okay, so that's dry enough for our purposes. And I'm just going to cut just a little flame shape. You guys will have to let me know what you want to name this little monster in the comments. He's super cute though already, I can tell. Okay, so there's his hair. Let's give him some eyeballs. So you could do this a couple of different ways. You could use some of these little plastic eyes and poke a hole, or you could felt on. You know what? Let's do the plastic one so that you can see the awl. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my eye hole, and I'm just going to poke very gently, and I can feel on the back. It doesn't need to go all the way through. So I can feel where it's starting to touch right there. That's enough. See that little hole? And give them two eyes kind of close together. I really like close together eyes. These are little glass bead eyes that you can get on Amazon. They have little posts on the end, like that. And it just makes them super easy to work with. So this is what I normally do. You can do a couple of different things. You can either stick it in and then pull it halfway out and put your glue. Sometimes it gets stuck. Or you can just make your hole, put a little dot of glue. Now, if this was for like a real serious project, something that I was gonna, you know, sell at a trade show to last years and years, I would be using maybe a super glue or Gorilla Glue. Oh my gosh, look how cute he is. He's adorable. So let's see what happened to our red. Did I already use all that red? You know what? Let's use the black. Let's make some little feet out of the black. So this is, again, carded wool. I really love to felt with the carded wool. I'm just going to roll it in my hands and try to get them both the same size. I can feel that this one's a little bit bigger. You can just kind of feel that in your hand. So lay them down. See how that one's just a tiny bit bigger? So pull that off. There. Now, I'm going to attach that. I'm just going to lay it on the bottom like that. Hold it with my other hand. Get my 38, or you could do this with your 36. And I'm just going to be careful of my finger. Just tack it down and then move my finger out of the way. And I'm just going to go, excuse me, around the edge of this circle. Once I get it all the way around the edge, then you can use your finer needle just to sort of go over the surface. And the reason I do that is because if I keep using a really strong needle, this is just going to push all this wool inside of this little guy. The finer needles they're more for fine tuning, and if you just want something to shape up and, you know, not be squashed, you can switch over to a finer needle, and you can get the look that you're looking for, that you're going for that way. Okay, you do the same little thing. Just need to hold it long enough just to get a piece of it down. So look at our little guy. Probably needs a mouth. I will give him a red mouth. Little smile. Hold that down. Take your fine needle. That was such a little tiny piece, I didn't even really have to hold it. I like to do kind of half cocked smiles. So like me start in the middle and then go sideways. I really like that. So you see, that is just simple little, like these are all the tools that I needed to do this. He's a cute little guy. I love him. I think I'm going to put him in my woolly collection, which are these little guys I sell at my trade shows. And he'll probably sell first thing. He is adorable. I might make more of these. So that's just an overview of all of my favorite tools. I hope you really enjoyed this. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'm going to have a lot more beginner videos coming up. If you're needing to really focus on fine-tuning your skills, stay tuned, because I have a lot of videos that are going to help you hone in on those skills. Making fine lines, wrapping wire, and making eyes, those kinds of things. So a lot of that's going to be coming up. I'm also going to be making a dinosaur in the beginning of December. That was a special request from a special subscriber. So I'm going to be happy to do that. And I hope you've enjoyed this tool video. If there's anything you want to learn about, anything you would like me to teach you, put it in the comments and I will be very, very happy to help you. Find me on Facebook. It's More Fun with Felt with spaces in between each word. Instagram is @morefunwithfelt, and you can find me online on my website, which is www.morefunwithfelt.com. I would be happy to, just communicate with you in any of these places. Facebook is my favorite, probably. And I will see you soon. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you got a lot out of this. Bye-bye.